Support for Current Conversations is provided by Outreach Video and Media Services, University of Oklahoma Outreach, and World Literature Today. Welcome to Current Conversations. I'm R.C. Davis Indiano. On the show today, we'll talk about the challenges that young people face concerning gender identity and cultural conflict. Yazmin Watkins is a member of the comedy troupe called Obama's Other Daughters and a social commentator. Romeo Jackson is a social analyst who taps into what young people think and express about the political and cultural world around them. Join us for two fascinating discussions. Yazmin Monet Watkins, welcome to Current Conversations. It is so good to have you on this show.
Thank you for the invitation.
Well, kind of a dream come true for me. I've seen you perform for years. Could I put you on the spot to maybe do a little bit of spoken word performance right now?
Sure. I have a poem. It's called The Playlist. I'm going to read it from my phone.
Okay.
But it's very much informed by like a sense of pride around being Black, but also some of the fears of just navigating the world as a Black person. So, and like there's 4 songs that inspired this poem. And it's Kanye West and Chance the Rapper, Ultralight Beam. I don't know if you've heard these songs, but look them up. Look them up, guys. Kendrick Lamar, Sing About Me, Beyonce and Kendrick song Freedom, and Kendrick Lamar's All Right.
Okay.
It is 1:20 on a Saturday afternoon. My partner and I are driving to my brother's house in Carson to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of my baby nephew's presence on this earth, the blessed breath in his lungs, the child so mercifully at play. His smile, a bright, gummy celebration. We tune the radio to a righteous gospel. This playlist, a litany for our survival. Up first, an ultralight beam in the darkest of our days. I hear prayer for the parents. I think of a different drive home, back to the privilege of a home. Far from the youth prison, I volunteer at teaching young boys the rifle of their own voice. We are driving away from the news of one of ours. Locked up for life, another shot down to death. We are both enraged and hopeless, and the grief wells up, a coiled knot in my throat, pinching the air from my lungs. We cannot breathe. And what a cruel game to demand a polite request to remove the foot on our necks. But these songs interrupt. Our only salve, our only salvation, this car ride, unsafe though it might be, the only place we have to process, to cry. And Kendrick moans, Sing About Me. When the lights turn down and this is my time to settle down, my main concern, promise that you will sing about me. And today we sing their names. Alton, Philando, Sandra, Eric, Corinne, Waukesha, Riddell, Mike, Trayvon, libations poured from our tears. Again and again we cry each name, a fat tear round and gathered on the edge of our eyelids, spilling down well-traveled paths on our cheekbones. And oh, how these tears fall away. But Beyonce croons, I break chains all by myself. And Kendrick shouts, let loose correctional gates and high desert. And oh, I am a rightful rage. Seething at the brink of my patience, this poem, an ode to my Blackness, because my Black make people uncomfortable. Makes them picket and petition online and in ballot booth, hidden by screen names, call-in names, all bloody murder and trigger finger. My Black make people scared. Well, boo-boo, because my Black ain't going nowhere. Will not bow my head nor dull my shine. My Black be a bold Black, a free Black. I refuse to take any more Black. My Black will no longer remain silent while this nation kills and incarcerates our people. Black, a blackity black type Black. My Black self loves Black. My Black be proud and loud and unapologetic. Transatlantic, my Black is a we gon' be aight Black. Can you hear me? Can you feel me? Our Black is information, and we have come for justice.
Whoa. I love that. Wow, that's great. So this is what you do. You're doing spoken word poetry like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a couple thoughts. You see, you probably don't know this, but I'm an English professor at the University of Oklahoma. And one thing that occurs to me is that what's happening now with this wonderful sort of work, you're not reinventing poetry, you're going back to where poetry started.
Yeah.
It was in America in the modern era, the poetry went into the classroom, we lost it out of real life. You're taking poetry back to people who want to hear it, where it doesn't have to be studied, it has to be heard and appreciated and let people be moved by it.
And I think part of it too, what I love about like the sharing of the poetry out loud is that it's like a point of entry, right? Or like it's more accessible in a way that like...
Powerful and accessible. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Like, and not just like my poetry, but like spoken word in general, the idea of like, and Audre Lorde talks about like not being afraid to like voice the things that matter to you. And I'm like butchering the quote, but like what is most important to me must be shared and made verbal.
Yeah.
And like that idea that like I care deeply about my community, like creating space for other queer, like Black women, like, and to be honest, I'm here for Black women, like queer Black women. I know this about my purpose and like what I am doing in the world. And so creating space for other Black women and other Black girls to like see themselves and to shine and to like empower them to share their own stories. Is like really important to me. So like spoken word allows me to like share it out loud, right? And to reach folks that wouldn't necessarily make it to your English class, you know?
Well, absolutely. And it makes poetry real again. You know what I'm saying? Or it's actually having an impact on life. There's somebody else I was thinking about, like a statement similar to what Audre Lorde said. Bertolt Brecht said, don't be afraid to think crudely. That sometimes the thing that needs to be said, don't worry about being sophisticated. Don't be worried about being smart. Sometimes you need to say the truth. And if it's crude, that's what you say.
Right.
And I think you're kind of following that.
And life is messy. There's no like cookie cutter way, even with like a 9 to 5 that you like figure things out. Like, I think what's led me to this point is trusting and pursuing the things that bring me joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that make me feel like I feel like I'm on purpose. And that's, I don't know, like...
It seems to me to do the kind of amazing things you do, and you do so many things. There's a lot of incredible ambition here. You have to have a pretty good working definition for what you're doing, sort of a definition of social justice, your own version of it. Do you have one you could share? When you think of what you're doing in the big picture, the kind of social justice aims, how do you talk about it to yourself? What do you say?
I mean, really, I see the work that I do creating space and safety for my people. And I know that's like kind of like my people, but like for queer Black women, for Black folk. I don't know how we get to this space where Black folks aren't getting shot, or trans Black bodies are not like floating up of rivers and blood around this
being
nation,
poisoned with bad water in Flint.
Like, these are the kinds of things that I think a lot of folks don't even know is happening. And I think it's the artist's job to really share the times, to talk about what's going on. And I love, BLM we close all of our meetings with Assata Shakur. And I'm sure you heard it, but it's like, it is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Ooh.
And like...
Echoes Karl Marx. Workers of the world arise, you have nothing to lose but your chains.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that idea that like, it's our duty. It's not just like, it's our duty to do this work, but also like we have to love each other. And the work I do comes from a deep love for my people.
Now, was there a single experience when you were growing up or when you're going through school that sort of crystallized for you, this work kind of work needs to be done? Oh, I could do this work. This could really fit for me. Or was there a role model that kind of gave you that idea? How did this come about for you?
So I know for me, my mother is a gender and women's studies professor at Cal State Northridge.
Explains a lot right there.
I know. I guess the apple doesn't fall very far. But I know, like, she would always, I remember looking at her bookshelf and be like, Mom, those books are boring. Like, I'm not interested in any of that. And I went to Dickinson on a Posse scholarship. It's a leadership scholarship. And I took Black feminist thought my sophomore year. And at that point, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian because I'm like, art is not real. And it shifted everything. It was like around the time that I was like struggling to come out and like navigate my sexuality, but then also I just like the class empowered me. Mm-hmm. And though I didn't see, sophomore year Yazmin doing art full time, I know that class was like super, like a pivotal like point in my life. And also, like, I want to, like, give gratitude to all the other mothers who have helped raise me, from professors, teachers, like, elder women in my life, ancestors. Like, I would not be who I am without the Black women who helped shape me. Mm-hmm. And, like, that includes, like, Audre Lorde and Alice Walker. You know what I mean? Like, people that I haven't met, but people that taught me to navigate my experience that I'm able to then pass on as well.
Now, here's the interview with Romeo Jackson. Where would you say that social justice values comes into what you do now most directly? Where are you aware that you're really advancing that cause?
I think it's actually my work outside of higher education, the academy, with community organizers. So I think one thing that happens when we become intellectuals or like we decide to do grad school is that we go into the ivory tower and kind of forget, right? Like we forget folks on the ground. Right. I think who really risk so much more than I think I do doing the work that I do. And so what I try to do is I do a lot of trainings and workshops with community organizers. I try to show up in solidarity a lot because I get the luxury to read for a living, right? Mm-hmm. Like I get to read and think for like 20 hours, 40 hours a week, and like that's great. But those folks don't have time to do that because most activists, as you probably know, are busy trying to survive plus doing this work. So this isn't the work they actually make a living off of. And I try to transmit knowledge as much as I can, or like different ways of thinking.
What are you teaching? What are the courses you're teaching?
So it really depends. So I do a lot of my work centers around coalition building. Once I think it's done, we're going to get anywhere. But also, I think, how do we think about that while centering the most margins? So I just developed a workshop around how do we center trans women of color in our community organizing, right, in our practice, right? Like, how do we take the practices that we do currently, so we're not remaking things, and how do we add analysis, and how do we add ways of thinking that really puts folks at the center? And I do a lot of like power analysis work.
Is this under a sociology heading, or?
I don't know if I have a heading.
Oh, okay. I mean, aren't you in a department? Or?
What department? Okay, yeah. I was like, I don't know if I have a heading. Well, that work is, so I teach in gender studies, but that work, that types of training workshops are outside of that. The classes I teach in higher education are like intro to gender studies classes because that's what they give to grad students.
Why do you think people in the country right now are so sensitive about gender issues? I mean, I can't think of too many issues that people seem to respond more from the gut and often in a kind of a negative way. What's going on with that? Why?
Yeah, so I think it's a bunch of stuff. I think first and foremost on this land, right, it has to do with colonialism, right? Like if we think of pre-colonial era, what is now the US, Canada, and Mexico, right, that there was much less strict gender roles, or that gender roles were more fluid, right? It wasn't as if like there was not gender roles, but the values that we assigned to them were dramatically different. So I think that's one, right? I think the importing of Christianity, right, was fundamental to colonialism, and then reinforcing binary gender systems, right? That like part of the justification for European settlers of colonizing the US was like, oh, like these native people have like gender roles that we don't understand. Right. I think there's that. And I think now contemporarily, like we're still filling that. And then also that it is fundamentally questioning people's worldviews, right? That like something as simple as like there are more than two genders, that you can exist outside of two genders, I don't think it's always about the gender part. It's about your fundamentally question everything I've been taught to know my whole life. And that scares us. I mean, it still scares me. Like when I learn new things that fundamentally shake my worldview, it's still a scary process. Unlike most people, I don't go out and then campaign against people, like kill people, beat them, harass them. We turn to internal reflection to understand why we're disrupted. But I think those are some of the reasons why.
Let me push this just a little bit further. I mean, what you're saying is really helpful. You know, you could say that any person you meet challenges your assumptions of the world. You've never met that person before. They're unique. What is it about, what does gender touch in people, I wonder, when it's being defined as a spectrum of response rather than just a sort of binary oppositions? I wonder what it touches that throws people off so much. I don't, because I really don't understand that response.
Well, part of it is also tied to an ideology. So I do like that, right, that push around, like, we meet people all the time who may check our assumptions, challenge things that we think to know, but I think that we've kind of built a society around it, right? And I think that's the piece that people also, that I think that elicits super hostile responses.
Things people just want to assume and they really don't want to talk about.
Or something that you're like, oh, like, I didn't know people wore contacts. Like that, like, sure, that's challenging an assumption, but like, I haven't tied my whole value to that. We've tied our values to gender and race and sexuality and ability, right? Like we have tied our worth, I think dominant people have tied worth to such those things that there's more at risk than like the contacts.
What I've heard from a lot of people who are socially active is that in the last 10 years, they feel like there's been some kind of shift, maybe in perception, maybe in reality. But I've heard a lot of people say that maybe roughly 10 years ago, they felt that more social change was really just like right on the horizon, about to happen. And they feel that in the last 10 years, things have become more difficult. It's like we weren't where we thought we were. Maybe we got pushed back. Thoughts on that? Do you see things that way?
So I was 14 10 years ago. And if I remember correctly, like this was during an election, like Obama was we're in that period.
About 12 years ago.
So, and I think the election of Barack Obama, I don't necessarily know why. I mean, I remember as a 14-year-old, like kind of thinking like, oh, great. Like, and for my great-grandmother who was still alive at the time, the election of a black president meant a lot, right? So my great-grandmother is from Mississippi. Like her mother was an indentured servant, like slavery is in that close proximity to my existence. So for my great-grandmother, for my grandmother, for my father, like those, like the election of Barack Obama meant a lot. But I think that was a misnomer, right? That this idea that just because we've elected this black body to the highest political office we have, that we were somehow in a progressive space. And I also think folks who are my age, like we came into political awareness in the age of Obama, right? Now, so the Obama administration was not perfect, right? There was still imperialism, right? There was still there was lots of things that were wrong with the administration that we tend not to think about. But that for us, like that's what we knew, right? Like we only knew this this black man being in political office who had like relatively progressive values compared to what we have heard about George Bush, right? Like I heard a lot about George Bush, but like, you're like, okay. So I think like part of what the election of Donald did, right, was like, oh, we are in a new national political moment that we haven't had to deal with before, right? Like we, meaning I think folks my age or millennials are just like, okay, like this is a different ball game nationally. Like we have someone who is spewing rhetoric that Barack Obama would have never uttered from his mouth probably. And so then how do we respond? Which I think also gets at a lot of our feelings of hopelessness, right? Like I think historically, like I was shocked the night of the election. I woke up the next morning like, well, duh, this is what happens, right? Like white panic set in, like there's always a backlash to what's perceived as racial progress. And so if we think of it historically, the election of Donald Trump is actually not that surprising in many ways. Like, yeah, like there's always backlash. Like we have Reconstruction and we have a wave, right, that led us into Jim Crow.
So is the sequence you're talking about, is it sort of roughly this, that world where people assume certain things about gender, certain things about power, that was the way the world was. Black president gets elected. For a lot of people that challenges that world and basically sets off a period of a kind of conservatism and reversion to as much as they can back to the world before Barack Obama?
Well, and I think national progressive leaders, I think community organizers are always kind of like disenchanted with national politics. But I think what happens, I interned in D.C. twice during Barack Obama's presidency. And what I noticed was a lot of like compromising and complacency. And then Donald Trump was elected, and we get this intense organizing. And I always wonder, what if we pushed this hard when we had a Democratic president?
Go back for just a second.
Yeah.
So you were in D.C. during Barack Obama's presidency. There was a lot of complacency on the part of...
I think progressive nonprofits based in D.C. to want to like, what in their eyes they saw as working with a sympathetic president.
So they just kind of took it for granted. We got this.
Yeah, or that we didn't push or challenge as hard as we wanted to. I don't know if you remember, but during the last Pride celebration in the White House, Jenna Gutierrez interrupted the president, really to name the harsh conditions that trans women face in detention centers, right? Like that part of what had happened was Pride or LGBT organizations were now welcomed in the White House. And once you get a seat at the table, right, we tend to stop being as radical, as agitating, right? But really, and what we saw is that Jenna Gutierrez was booed, right? That this trans undocumented woman who was really naming these harsh conditions was booed by people in the room partly because folks thought like, oh, Barack Obama has been so good to us. Well, he's been good to some of us, right? Like that's true. Like we've gotten stuff, but that, like, I think complacency, that okay with accepting anythingness.
That sense that we've got it, we can go to the next stage, people can make demands that they should make to go to the next stage of social justice, and not realizing what a lot of the working class, white working class was thinking during this period.
Well, I think that, or I think what a lot of poor, queer, and trans people of color were experiencing and thinking, right? Because most of the progress we got from the Obama administration, did it really help poor and trans people of color, right? Or did it help the gay elite? Right? Like, I mean, it helped me, but like, I'm in higher education, right? Like, I have all this mobility, like, you know? So there were parts of that I definitely benefited from, but to suggest that my cousins who are Black and poor and trans...
Well, see, I've heard this from Black friends who say, you don't know what it was like. A lot of white America doubled down. Basically, if you want to elect a Black president, then we're going to make you pay a little bit.
Oh, of course.
And they said it was a tough time for a lot of Black communities because of that doubling back. Are you disappointed where things are socially right now? Is this a period of a dark period of disappointment? How would you describe how you feel about this?
You know, I'm a pessimist. And so it's always a dark period for me. Well, and so I try, because I don't think this is a uniquely bad period, right? I think it's always been bad, and it always probably will be bad as long as our nation state is maintained. So I know that, I think, and I try to also hold, once like I was saying earlier, that a lot of us, this heightened rhetoric is intense and new. But what I will say is that Barack Obama deported millions of people from this country, right? Like, I mean, like, this system that Donald Trump has activated and raised in public profile and rhetoric was not built when he was elected. And so that's when I say it's always a dark period for me, is that we have always been deporting millions and millions of people from this country, right? Like, trans women of color continued to be killed when Barack Obama was president. And so part of, I think, my frustration with our rhetoric around Donald Trump is that, oh, this is uniquely bad, or we have to, like, I don't think it's uniquely bad. Like, you know, the government has always suppressed Indigenous and Native people. Like, that's not new. And so, and so how do we make sense of the heightened rhetoric, but also stay diligent, right? Remember, like, that we stay focused, that, like, these systems and structures are much deeper than Donald Trump. Like, I mean, we can impeach the man, but like then we get Mike Pence, and then we get Paul Ryan, and you're like,
where are we?
You're like, okay, like then where are we? Right? You're like, I don't know. So that's why I say, like, I don't feel a pretend sense of dread, but I will say the day after the election, it was hard for me to go outside.
Now, your friends who are roughly your age, would this be what you're explaining today, which I'm very persuaded by the way, it sounds good. Is this a critique that you hear from a lot of your friends that you share with each other? Would you say this is a kind of a young person's critique right now?
Well, I have a very particular friend group, but like, so yes, I think in our friend group, like what I'm articulating now, like, I mean, we talk about it, like, right, that's why, I mean, like, we talk about it all the time, I think about it all the time. But I do think that I think this type of acknowledgement of certain things also is is hard to grapple with, particularly because I do have friends who are very actively involved in national politics, who are involved in electoral politics, who do voter rights organizing, and those are the type of things that I don't spend a lot of time thinking about. And like that, I think that work is important. And so I don't know if like I hold like a similar belief to a lot of those folks, but
Let me interject.
Yes.
You know, the line on you and people your age very often is you're just not involved. You just don't want to know about politics. But you're showing a whole different side.
Yeah.
You're saying, oh, no, we're savvy. We're just not going to go with the sort of national PR about anything. We're going to look at the reality of how things are really playing on the ground for the communities, the trans, other communities, how they're really, really affected, not the way it's being described.
Well, or that like, is voting the only way to be involved in things? Like there's always, right? So there's like, we have constructed a reality where like only voting in electoral politics is the only way to be engaged.
Yeah.
Right, and that there's,
yeah.
right, and like for some, like, you know, like, people forgot, but like I didn't vote in the last election because I was faced with Donald Trump, who's admittedly a terrible person. Hillary Clinton would have been better, right? Like this is the disconnect, I think, a lot when we don't think of embedded structures and system, is that is there a policy that Hillary Clinton would have passed that would have been better?
Like, would have really made any difference.
Would have made a significant shift in our culture. And so I didn't choose to put my energy towards voting, right? And so then the conversation becomes, Romeo, well, then you can't complain. I will. Right? Like,
well, you make me think that people shouldn't be assuming what young people are thinking.
Yeah.
You should hear.
Yeah.
Okay, not a lot of time left.
Oh, okay.
If you look maybe like 10 years down the road,
okay.
what's something that's going to happen, good or bad, in the area of the world that will affect race and race equity, that people can remember you said and decide you were right or not?
So my moment of optimism. I do think the increased rhetoric and the backlash created by Donald Trump, I hope will spark, I think, us to think really deeply about structures and systems, that think deeply about what it means when one of us make it and what that might mean for the rest of us.
It's like an awakening.
Yeah, and I really hope that we begin to interrogate our own anti-immigrant sentiment, right? Because I think one of the things that has happened post-election is that I'm talking a lot more about anti-immigrant sentiment in our country.
Good, we can look for that. So, thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for being on the show. Thank you so much for being with us. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Join us next time for more current conversations.